Blessings on the coming kingdom of our father David.
Alleluia, 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 alleluia. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. The people stayed there before the cross, watching Jesus. As for the leaders, they jeered at him. He saved others, they said. Let him save himself if he is the Christ of God, the chosen one. The soldiers mocked him too, and when they approached to offer him vinegar, they said, If you are the King of the Jews, save yourself. Above him there was an inscription, This is the King of the Jews. One of the criminals hanging there abused him. Are you not the Christ? He said. Save yourself and us as well. But the other spoke up and rebuked him. Have you no fear of God at all? He said. You got the same sentence as he did, but in our case, we deserved it. We are paying for what we did. But this man has done nothing wrong. Jesus, he said, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Indeed, I promise you, he replied, today you will be with me in paradise. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Over this past year, we've had a lot of exposure to royalty, and I suspect it's going to be the same next year. But, you know, when you think about kings and queens and heads of state, what comes to your mind? I bet you it's something to do with wealth, with big houses, with flashy transport, all the trappings of power. I mean, just think of the President of the United States. You know, whenever he wants to go anywhere, he has to undergo this. You know, he's nipping out for a pint of milk, and half the world are following him. There's a lot of palaver. And I was kind of searching through the various things that royalty have and, you know, things that they use to emphasize their status. And I'm afraid the biscuit goes to the Sultan of Brunei. This is his car. You know, a gold Rolls Royce. Now, the gold trimmings all round that car, the hubcaps, that's pure gold. He's got it specially made. And he's not content with just having a flashy Rolls Royce. He's built a throne into the boot so that him and his wife can drive through and wave to the masses. That takes the biscuit, you know. And here we are today in the church, celebrating a feast day, Christ the universal King. There's something jarring about that. You know, when we think of kings and queens and heads of governments, we see power and wealth, status, and yet what we are presented with today is something completely different. You know, Jesus doesn't have a gold Rolls Royce. He has a cross. That's what Jesus is on. And today we pick up that gospel in Luke's gospel. All year we've been following Luke. He's been on a journey. Jesus has been on a journey. And the journey is towards Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is the place where Jesus is going to bring about our salvation. Now he's reached his destination. And the destination is hanging on the cross. That's Jesus' throne, the cross. And we hear of two deathbed conversations, really, with the two criminals. You know, Jesus has been put to death along with criminals. And you know, this is important, and we should take heed of this, that he was with criminals. And here's why. Because there's a lot of them about. You know, do you know the population of the prisons today in the United Kingdom? There are 88,090 people incarcerated in UK jails today. That's a lot of people. But do you know what percentage of the population have a criminal record? It's a massive 27%. 20% of people in the UK have a criminal record. That's roughly about 1 in 4 people are criminals. You know, do we start counting out and get every 4th person to stand up to see what that looks like here? You know, 1 in 4 people that you meet have a criminal record. And that's the ones that get caught. The rest of us haven't been caught yet. And so we find Jesus on a cross between 2 criminals. And that's significant. That's not an accident. Jesus didn't die with criminals by accident. That was God's plan all along, that he would die with criminals. It's foretold in the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah foretells that the Holy One of God will die as a criminal. It's part of God's plan. That's what God wanted to do. Why? Because he loved them. Jesus is described in the Gospels as a friend of sinners. You know, wouldn't it be great if we all have that title? We are friends of sinners. You know, it'd be great to say, he's a friend of sinners, she's a friend of sinners, I'm a friend of sinners. And we tend not to do that. We tend to distance ourselves, to think we're something special, that we don't associate. Well, our God does associate, and it's his plan, and it's been the pattern of Jesus' life from the word go. You know, Jesus was born with animals. He died with criminals. Jesus was born in a manger, and he dies on a cross. It's part of God's plan. And today we have this conversation, this deathbed conversation with the 2 criminals. Notice Jesus doesn't get involved in the debate. And the two men hanging there, one criticizes Jesus, he mocks Jesus with the rest of the crowd. And basically what's going on is self-interest here. He's saying, if you really are the Christ, you know, save yourself and save me. You know, get me out of this. And the other criminal is taken aback. He's aghast. And he says, do you have no fear of God? You know, we are here on this cross because we deserve it. You know, the word that is used for criminals in the Gospels, the Greek word, means evil people. You know, whatever Luke doesn't tell us, whatever crime they've committed, but we know it was bad. It deserved death on a cross. It deserved crucifixion. So you don't get that because you didn't pay your parking fine. This was serious. And the other criminal says, if you have no fear of God, we are paying for what we did. This is the just reward, if crucifixion could ever be called just. But it was in the 1st century. This is our just reward. Have you got no fear of God? And the word that is used for fear is not really have the meaning that we use the word fear. You know, when we talk about fear, it's like the fear you have when there's a bully in your life, you're afraid of them. Or, you're afraid of of what's round the corner or some kind of disaster. It's a fear. It worries us. And that's not the fear that the man is talking about. He's saying what he means by fear is, are you not in awe of God? Are you not in awe of God for what he's doing? Can you not see what God is doing? So why do you need to fear a God who allows his king to die on a cross? You don't have to fear that God. You do have to be in awe of that God. You know, God holds nothing back in his desire to bring us salvation. He allows his only Son to become a human being and to pour out his life on a cross so that he can welcome you and me into his kingdom forever. That's the love that we see witnessed on the cross. It's an absolutely total self-sacrificial love. God gives himself completely, even over to death, so that we might have life. Before that, we should stand in awe. This is some God that we have. He will pay any price. He will pay the ultimate price so that we can experience his love. And if we put our trust in this love of God, then we too will hear the words of Christ. This day you will be with me in paradise.